Hi, I'm Jessica Wilson, and I am here interviewing a future principal candidate, and this is Terrance Brown. Thank you for being here. All right, I'm going to ask you 10 questions. So the first one is, can you describe your process for initiating and leading curriculum planning at the district or school level? And how do you ensure alignment across grade levels and content areas?
So the first part about initiating and leading curriculum planning, uh, at a district level or school level, I would first involve all stakeholders to make sure that I'm getting buy-in from those involved. Uh, that would be my initial part, just to make sure we are all on one page as far as the curriculum and the planning part of it. Uh, to make sure that I have alignment across the district and across grade levels and content, I will perform a crosswalk, just making sure that certain aspects of the curriculum, which may disappear at one grade level, that we're supporting it at the next grade level, just to make sure those standards are being retained by our students. Across content areas, I would have our teachers make sure that they're doing cross-curricular activities during that process. So let's say for something as far as slope, in math, I would make sure they integrate the units that come across in science when they're doing directly and indirectly proportional.
Okay. Number two, how do you collaborate with district leadership and the school board to develop or revise curriculum policies?
All right. So same thing with collaborating with the district leadership and the school board. Before I talk to district leadership, I would have data gathered from our stakeholders, our parents, our school leaders, principals, and department chairs to get feedback on our current policy, our current curriculum, because I want to definitely target the parts of our curriculum that may need to be changed while keeping the parts that don't need to be changed.
Okay, I agree. Number three, what strategies do you use to support principals and instructional coaches in monitoring curriculum implementation and improving instruction?
Okay, to support principals and instructional coaches, I would definitely do training on how to properly do walkthroughs. So I would do a calibration with the principals and instructional coaches to make sure they're seeing the same thing I'm seeing when I walk through, and to make sure that our walkthroughs are targeted to a specific implementation that's happening in the classroom. So if we're going to target, uh, let's say, diverse lesson plans or culturally responsive lesson plans. We want to make sure that we're looking at this in the same way.
Okay, so number four, give it an example of how you've used student performance data to guide curriculum revisions or instructional changes.
Okay, so as a current resource teacher, uh, what we've noticed is that when our special ed kids are given instruction in the same way as our general ed students, let's say we have a teacher giving notes and explaining those notes at the board or whatever media they're using. I noticed when we do U-tries or we check for understanding for those special ed kids, they're not giving those same responses as the special ed kids. So one revision that I made and suggested to my team was that we start having those students write out their notes first and then have a discussion. That way we're not hitting them with uh, having them overload them with using visual and auditory to then process all the information at one time. While giving them the notes, it allows them to see what we're going to talk about and process that part of it, then go back to their notes and have discussions, which I think this would also help not just our special ed population, but any of our students that are struggling with that part of it.
Okay. Number five, how do you identify professional learning needs among staff and design effective development experiences that support curriculum goals?
Okay, so The first part, looking at the professional needs of our staff, I would take kind of a multi-pronged attack to that. I would look at the feedback from the actual person. I would look at feedback that's from their PLC group, and I would also look at their T-test. What do they think they need help in? And based on all of that information, I will look at the things maybe they're not putting down, the stuff that maybe we're seeing in walkthroughs that maybe everybody else is seeing. And I would collaborate with them with all that information and then get the buy-in to see if this is something that they feel they would need help in.
Okay. So six, how do you ensure that curriculum addresses the needs of diverse learners, including students with disabilities, English language learners, and other underserved groups?
Uh, I would make sure that our curriculum or our instruction that we're providing is targeted to to where we're using the data that we get from our lessons and using that in PLC to do data dives to see if there are certain subgroups that are struggling with certain concepts. So by doing that targeted instruction and making sure that we're not just using whole group instruction without the data, that way we can have something to go on and be able to measure and monitor any kind of performance upticks or some performance decreases so we can know exactly where we're going, what we need to change and what we need to keep.
Okay. So number seven, what process do you follow when selecting textbooks and learning resources? And how do you balance academic rigor with accessibility and diversity?
So far in our school district, we're not so much using textbooks. If we do, it's online, but we're more of using adaptive curriculum that is online, such as IXL, some Delta Math. So to balance that academic rigor, I would once again use the data to see where our students are performing and look at also not just performance data, but engagement data. Because a lot of times, if you decrease the rigor, you'll see behavior problems showing up because our students are not necessarily connecting with it because they feel they know it or it might be something they do know. As far as accessibility, we have to make sure that we are meeting the students where they are. And that goes also with diversity. We have to make sure that we are giving examples or giving scenarios that would be culturally responsive to our students.
Number eight, describe a time when you led a team of teachers or administrators in a curriculum project. What made it successful?
Okay, so I developed a database, and by the first part of it, it looked like it was just a scheduling database, but it was based on our sped students' schedules being uh, changed around at the beginning of the year, which led to their performance dipping for the first 6 weeks. And I also noticed that their performance would go up in the second 6 weeks. Well, the thing that was happening, their schedules were being changed, and that would make that would they would not have stability in those classes, which they need, and they weren't getting the support that they needed in those classes, which resulted in a lack of performance. So the what made that successful was the buy-in. So getting buy-in from all the counselors, the administrators. So just advertising it, getting feedback from everyone, seeing how they would feel about a database. Would it be something that they would use? And once it was developed, just going over training and pushing and making sure everybody was on the same page as far as their mindset of how to use it, when would this be used, and how it would benefit everybody, not just the counselors, not just the students, but everyone.
Okay. And number nine, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of a curriculum over time? And what steps do you take to revise and improve it?
Okay, looking at a curricula over time, I would definitely have to use longitudinal data from the district and seeing how our overall schools are performing as a district on certain TEKs. So I would have to look at different schools because a curriculum is something you want to use over the entire district. So if I'm going to make it changes like that, I want to make sure that I'm looking at not just one school, not just one teacher, but everybody. So if I'm looking at a specific TEK and I'm seeing every school struggle with that, then I'm going to bring that to the board's attention, bring that to the school's attention and see what are we doing to make that successful? What do we maybe need to make our schools more successful on there? And then I would pitch those ideas to the school board and see if that's something we can make a curriculum change.
Okay. What are some key steps you take to build a culture where staff regularly uses data and research to inform their instruction?
Uh, I would say the same thing, getting buy-in on that. So we've got to, one, model that and see how it can be effective at the school. So I would show them data where one team or another school is using data and how it changed their school and relate that to how we could help our PLCs in our schools. So just showing them that this will work, showing them how it would benefit them. And while it would be work and it would be change of mindset in the beginning, but it would also help with the behavior problems, student engagement, and so forth. Now, this would not be an overnight thing, but it would be something we'd have to push through PLCs and make sure we're doing it consistently cons over time and just make sure that our teachers are trained into doing deep dives and so forth to make sure our students are successful. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to answer my questions.
Oh, no problem.